Good morning, and welcome to the first in our season of marvellous interactive festival sessions with some of the country's leading festival experts. This is your opportunity to ask our panel any question you have related to what has become one of the most dynamic and, if done well, potentially most rewarding marketing channels for your brands. Let me first introduce today's panel. Welcome to Robert Richards, who is Commercial Director of Glastonbury. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your history at Glastonbury, Robert?
It would take quite a while, I think. I've worked at the festival for over 20 years, and over that time I've done various different roles and involving ticketing. I still manage the ticketing and sponsorship and the relationship with the local farmers and the festival, and lots of aspects that need to be covered off.
So Robert is going to be taking your questions on the festival market overall, and perhaps along the way he'll be able to give us a few nuggets about the magic that represents Glastonbury and has propelled Glastonbury to the global phenomenon it now is. Let me introduce now a couple of my colleagues from our festival activation team, Orla Barron and Paul Stook, Account Director and Festival Event Director respectively. Between them, Orla and Paul have notched up many hours in muddy festival fields, some of them at Glastonbury, not all of them, it has to be said. And they'll be taking questions on how best to leverage the festival environment for your brands, what KPIs you could or should be setting, and how to achieve them. And finally, my colleague Ben will be your voice on the panel, asking your questions of the team here. How's that going to work, Ben?
So, as you'll see, we're live. The page that you're watching this stream from, if I can channel my inner weather girl, if you look to our chat column down to this side, you'll be able to submit questions, and I can see some of you already have. Thank you very much. We're also live on Twitter. You can tweet us at Festival Experts or use the hashtag Festival Fridays.
Thanks, Ben. To kick off, let me first ask Robert, as the UK is now coming out of a period of recession or austerity, depending on how you define it, what can we expect from the festival market in 2014 and the next few years?
That's a really good question. I think there's been a real pullback in a number of festivals over the last couple of years, and I think people are going to be quite wary about going back into that market. I also think that now there has been that period when there were so many more festivals, people have realised that actually running a festival, if your only aim is to make money, you're going to wait quite a long time to get a return.
Payback. Yeah.
So I'm sure there will be brave people out there who will set up new festivals. I also think that some of the festivals that are out there now, may fall over, just not because of necessarily because of the economic environment, but just because I think there is a lot of insecurity in this area. I don't think people have really understood just what it takes to put on a festival and the resources needed to keep it going. I think
Absolutely.
That's quite a big
Well,
thing.
I think it's true to say that Glastonbury becomes the second largest city in the southwest for those few days in June, so second only to Bristol. So if you think of the resource that I know you're commanding for that, it's an extraordinary feat, and not for the faint-hearted. So, Orla and Paul, what does that mean for the UK festival consumer? Give us a pen portrait of who goes to festivals.
Well, I think festivals are pretty much for everybody now, with the diversity that there is now on all the festivals out there. All age groups, all demographics are out there. I think there's still a core 18 to 34 audience, but brands can really start targeting specific age demographics or other demographics, 18 to 24 core or families potentially. There's a whole mix out there in festivals.
I agree, you're right. I think it's very difficult to put a badge or a stamp on who the UK festival goer is. I mean, I think there is quite a few people out there who are sort of pretty fed up with the mundane, boring Mondays to Friday 9 to 5 aspects of their lives, and they go to a festival expecting pure wonder, escapism, enjoyment and just freedom. It is that weekend, whether it be a short weekend, a long weekend, as Robert's Glastonbury takes part over the best part of a week. They just want to get away from everything. So that you shouldn't stamp this as a UK festival goer. There's so many music genres out there that would fit a particular enthusiast of dance or enthusiast of indie or rock or whatever it may be, and there is no crossover between those two music genre audiences, is what we find. So it encompasses everyone. UK festival goer is everyone. It's everyone in this room and it's everyone out there. So that would be my take on it, and standing in those wet, muddy fields over many, many years.
Yeah, so it's a frame of mind rather than a demography.
Yes,
okay, I think that's a really important insight.
Yes.
So apart from the size of the festival audience and its diversity, Robert, what else is there about a festival environment that presents such a unique opportunity for engagement, do you think?
Engagement with brands.
Brands, yeah.
I think it is a unique environment because people are away from their, as Paul said, away from their daily lives. But I think that potential and that opportunity has to be really well considered because people are away from their daily lives. Certainly at Glastonbury, they don't want to be bombarded by commercial brands, in brackets, exploiting their presence and interfering with what they may perceive as what they're really wanting to do. Yeah. So, you know, we have brands that work with the festival. Uniquely, Orange EE, for example, has worked with the festival for 15 years. And because it provides something that the festival goers need, it can engage with them in a constructive way. But I think you can go to other events where, you know, sampling or whatever is so ill-considered that it's actually detrimental to the brand.
Yeah, I think it's all about the credibility, is it not? I mean, what impact does that thought have on brands that want to harness the festival arena, Orla?
Well, I think gone are the days when bannering or just shoving a name on a main stage is now acceptable. Consumers are a lot more savvy, and that isn't a meaningful experience for them. It's very much about offering experiences more than anything, and giving consumers something to enjoy and engage with in the field. And I mean, there is a lot of downtime. You know, people have things that they want to see, certain acts at certain times, but there's a lot of downtime, and in that time people are looking to engage with something. So giving them something that is what they want is perfect.
Yeah, thanks, Orla. I just think, touching very briefly on Robert's point about learning what the ethos is of a particular festival is very important for any brand that's thinking of getting engaged in festivals, because I think there is an element of research that needs to be done. We certainly do it to considerable detail, and I think if you are thinking of positioning your brands, go out there, get your wellies on and go out and traipse around festival sites and have fun and enjoy it, and then think, now I get this is what I need to bring to this festival. I can't just maybe bring out my stand that I may have at an exhibition centre and put it into the middle of a field at Glastonbury or the middle of a field at, you know, all these many other fantastic opportunities are out there. I think what I'm trying to say, it's just do a little bit of research and find out a little bit more. Okay.
So we're going to be coming to the audience questions in a moment, but just one last question for Robert. Festivals not only provide exceptional opportunities for brands, but also unforgettable atmospheres for festival goers. How do you at Glastonbury continue to stay at the top of your game in terms of extraordinary and memorable concepts? You do?
Yeah, we do.
I've been there.
I think the reality of that is that Glastonbury is a very unique organisation made up of federated areas, and Michael Eavis has, I think, over the years created the festival and the ethos of the festival, but the individual area organisers, and I think there's something like 21, 30, depending how you categorise them, who are dedicated to making their area the best, and that may mean doing the same thing every year but doing it better. It may mean completely changing it, and we have areas that over the last 20 years have radically altered because trends in music have changed. But the individual has ownership of that area, and I think that's a unique quality to Glastonbury.
Absolutely.
When you visit and you go to an area and you are absolutely blown away by what you've seen, there's somebody who takes ownership of that and has spent all year with a team of designers and technicians building it. And Michael's there as a focus point, but he's not, as in other events, and I'm not criticising anyone, but in other events, when you meet the promoter or you meet the festival organiser, they are over everything.
Yeah.
They determine every aspect of it. Michael appoints people who he trusts and has regard for, and they then do their best, and that's, I think, the key the success.
I think that's unique.
People the freedom to express themselves in a manner which, obviously, giving people the freedom to express themselves brings so much more than just being told we have to do this and we have to do that, and being given the license that that Robert and Michael give Glastonbury Festival goers. I've only been on a few occasions myself, I have to admit, and it's just an experience of a lifetime. So there are, say, this side Glastonbury huge, but then you also pick up the very, very similar experiences at some of those smaller independent festivals, which have a lot of freedom, a lot of license, and want to bring creativity into their festival. That's what they pride themselves on.
Sure, and I'm sure a number of festival brands have seen the festivals have seen the longevity of Glastonbury, and it's something that they want to emulate. So
Absolutely.
whether they operate quite such a cooperative model, I doubt, but they've certainly looked at some of the things that Glastonbury has brought and tried to emulate with varying degrees of success, I think it has to be said. So now we're going to go over to our audience questions. So Ben, what's the first question?
Well, I think we'll start with Zoe's submission. We've talked about a very diverse market. At one end, we've got these huge events such as Glastonbury that offer almost different worlds within it. But then at the other end, we've got the smaller festivals, which again are as diverse as each of those areas within Glastonbury. So what Zoe's asked is, am I better to go to one of the bigger ones and try and tap into all of these, or do I use a collection of the smaller festivals?
As a brand owner?
As a brand owner, yeah.
I think anybody entering into that arena where you have a Glastonbury at one end and 10,000 people coming together for a weekend in a wood would be very, 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 very ill-advised to just go somewhere. I think they need to go to a number of festivals, and as Paul said, get a sense of what their brand needs. Then, when they've made that decision, they need to, I would suggest, go to a smaller festival, because the logistics of a smaller event are easier to achieve, and go through the motion, bring their team on, because using the analogy of stallholders at Glastonbury, we have just under 1,000 stallholders, and we wouldn't be comfortable letting somebody come for the first festival to Glastonbury. What we say to people is, you've got a lovely food stall, we really want to work with you, but please go away and do a smaller event first, because it's almost cruel, I think, to put somebody through a big event. And then you've got the other consideration, which I think Paul and Will are experts on, which is advising people about what level and what style of festival suits their brand, because you could be a very big brand and actually you'd be very clever to work with small events and do a number. And that decision is impossible to just read off a chart. You've got to take the people you're working with, the people that we have a very different relationship to the sponsors, the few sponsors we have, to other festivals. And do you want to be in that ecosystem or that ecosystem? And you need people like Ignis to help direct you. Otherwise, what I see when I go to festivals is you see things that work wonderfully and you think, how clever of them to be here. But unfortunately, we've all been there.
Oh, yes.
You see brands and you just think, it's not even the waste of money, it's the damage they're doing, because people just recognise this is not right. This is the wrong activation, this is maybe even the wrong product for this festival. So you've got to be very careful, I think.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah, there's so much involved in the production side and the implementation side of festivals as well, that doing it on a smaller scale, there's enough involved in that, let alone going to the likes of Glastonbury. And I mean, I know for us it was a huge learning curve going to Glastonbury for the first time. It's huge, and there are just other added levels that you don't even have to think about on the smaller ones. But I mean, in terms of brands where they go with perhaps a little bit of experience and a bit of knowledge behind them, I think it depends what brands want to achieve. If it is that it's a numbers game, they really want to get out to a large number of people, then festivals offer a great opportunity there. But if it is more about having those really important engagements one-on-one with people, then perhaps a smaller festival or an area in a festival where you can have that time to properly engage.
And I think it's true to say you track smaller festivals, do you not, from the inception, and you see them grow and put brands in at the right level for those brands themselves.
Do, Steph, and going back to what I said earlier, I do see the value of a brand leveraging and building with a particular festival, And it doesn't just need to be a 1-year deal. You could look at 2-3 year deals, which have their own benefits with regards to financial investment, because I think there are a lot of festivals out there that like to tie up deals on a long-term basis. It makes their sort of management, commercial, marketing departments more comfortable. They've got an association, they can grow with that festival, they know that this particular brand will fit their festival audience, rather than chopping and changing, and this person comes in, they dip out, they have to find someone else. And I think there's that synergy, because I think I mentioned before about this triangular approach, where it's the needs and wants of a brand, a consumer, and possibly most important, what the festival want, what they would like for you to bring to their particular festival. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Great answers, everyone.
Sure. So sticking with this overview of festivals, something we as marketers talk about always is whatever we do with a brand, it's got to remain true to their core pillars and their core identity. If I as a brand holder want to engage with the festival arena, do I have to already be engaging with music or have an association with music?
I don't think you necessarily do, but I do think it helps. I do think it helps because you are going into an environment where people are very, very, how can I say, let's take a sporting analogy on there. There are people that follow their various sports, football, rugby, whatever teams it might be. There are people out there now that are in love with particular music genres, and they will go to a festival because that's their festival. So I think you should consider that. That has to be considered. I feel,
but equally,
personally.
there are festivals where one doesn't know the headline act before one
absolutely.
signs up,
That's the beauty of
including Glastonbury.
Absolutely.
But you know, some of the smaller festivals,
people-
actually the bands are not the primary concern, I would
Absolutely
argue.
not. There are distinct opportunities. Sorry, I'm hopping your mic. Sorry. There are distinct opportunities where the likes of Glastonbury, and you know, there are a few other festivals out there who will sell it up before a band's even announced. But then you look at some of the other bigger, particularly rock festivals, where that's very, very led by the acts and the content that they put in. People see they're playing, she's playing, he's playing, and then they will book tickets according to that. So it's very, very different types of audience and what festivals have to offer for them, and brands, obviously.
Robert, do you have a view on the music issue, as obviously Glastonbury is the premier music festival?
I think all of these things have to be very specific to the brand and the people involved with the brand, the people involved with the festival. I think that you know, people at a festival for a weekend aren't just listening to music, and if they were just listening to music, it would be a bit of an odd event. So the idea that only music associated brands can come to festivals, but I do think it raises that same issue, which is if the activation is wrong, if it's a sampling opportunity in a festival which just doesn't work, for example, then it doesn't matter what the association is. And then the alternative is true, that you can have a product that doesn't really have any connection with a festival, but because it's been cleverly positioned and the activation is intelligent to the audience at that event, it doesn't matter. You know, I mean, it is, I think, absolutely in all these cases boringly about research, about sympathy to the event and understanding what that event is, and then working with it rather than just having some sort of cookie cutter.
I think that's the point I was going to make as well, is that there's always something more than just the music. Yes, some are more focused on the music than others, but there is more to it, and people are looking for things outside of seeing the acts that they've got on their schedule of their to-see list.
Brilliant. And I think one thing we touched on there were the acts, which, as we all know, are a huge part of the festival parcel. And Matt, who is watching, has just submitted a great question on that note. And Robert, hopefully this will be of interest to you, given the positioning of Glastonbury. And what Matt's asking is there a future in the world-class music events, or are we going to see things devolving, or maybe even a rise in the pop-up style events?
I'm not sure what a pop-up style event is, to be honest.
So a not completely organised event, is
I
guess
think
the sense
not
of that,
completely organised, as we see with we see brands doing it quite often, and it makes for great content, and we're pulling people off the street and taking them into an experience that has had no
Sort of
publicity
a
whatsoever.
happening, which is a very 60s
Yeah.
word, but I guess
Yeah.
something that just happened.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're talking
That's
not only
interesting.
musically, but
Yeah.
also just from an experience point
The
of view.
unexpected.
Is it structure versus
I
surprise?
think
guess?
that
Glastonbury
what
pop-up.
we're certainly talking. I think what Paul and I are talking about are events that people look forward to,
Yeah.
and that they go
Anticipate.
again to,
Yeah.
and they find their corner, and they, in principle, want to come back to their corner. So I think that I'm not saying that you can have all sorts of events, but I think that festivals tend to be places people come to with an expectation and are looking forward to, and when they arrive, they want certain things to be there, and the benefit to a brand, the benefit to them, the benefit to everybody involved is that it's been planned and it's organised, it's safe. I mean, I think one of the really key things we sort of need to understand is that you're bringing a large number of, Glastonbury for example, you're bringing a large number of people together, and one of the things that makes them enjoy themselves is because they feel safe.
Yeah.
They feel, they know that the water works, they know that the food's good, they know that all the entertainment will happen. There's a genuine sense of sort of calm progression about the weekend. There's a timetable. And then in that, there's all these unexpected things. But in my understanding, a pop-up is sort of like it's there and then it's gone. And I think that's another experience, to the traditional sense of a festival. Will festivals continue as they are? Almost certainly not. I mean, people, I think, will always love live entertainment. I think the more and more digitalised our lives become, the more people's fond memories are from the experience of being in a group of people, watching something happen live on stage. And I think that will never go. And I think, in fact, it will become more valuable as we become more bombarded by images and digital projections and the like. But I don't think, I think an obvious thing is that, the mega bands that have come about since the 60s don't seem to be being propagated at the moment so much. So you have great bands, but they don't have the sort of archive, they don't have the backstory that the Rolling Stones do and the other really massive bands. And so the nature of lineups, I think, will change. Yeah.
Great.
I think you could almost say that festivals are a type of pop-up in a way, in that they're there for a very short amount of time,
Good point.
Yeah.
albeit a very elaborate
An organised pop-up.
and a very well planned out pop-up.
Yeah.
But it's quite similar in terms of how a brand might see it, in that it's there for a limited period of time, and in fact you've got to make the most out of that engagement period and maximise that.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to move us on because I must say, and thank you to everyone who's submitting questions. They are coming in fairly quickly now we've got underway. If we don't get round to asking your questions today, we are going to be here for a little longer after the webcast with Robert. So we'll go through a few of your questions then, and we'll make sure that we publish all those answers to you after the webcast. Moving to, it's food or social? Where do we go?
Let's go social.
Social.
I'm feeling social.
Okay then, brilliant. So I guess to start with a similarly ever-expanding channel of mobile, how is mobile changing the way we're interacting with festival audiences?
Well, we introduced mobile registration last year, which means that you can send your photograph and your details up on your mobile device, which Glastonbury you need, because we don't like the secondary market in tickets, and we've successfully killed that off for us anyway. And it's I think the easiest way of putting the importance of mobile is on site is, it's inconceivable that we wouldn't have charging facilities, and E and Orange have been there for 15 years at the festival, charging people's phones. I think they charged 75,000 people at the festival, which is,
Extraordinary.
over half our audience. And it's just not, I certainly couldn't imagine going to a 5-day festival where the festival organisers, through a partner or themselves, didn't offer charging. So it's a massive thing. One of the sort of graphic examples for me is that I remember pre-mobiles at Glastonbury, and we had a very, very organised system that if you got lost from your friends, which happened every 5 minutes, you wrote a note and you stuck it on a big drum and you basically said, see you at the meeting point at 1 o'clock. And we had a very large meeting point, and at 1 o'clock you turned up and your mates had read the note, and it's just like I'm it's a different world. And that area now is still called the meeting point, but you know, even at Glastonbury, you don't find anybody waiting for their mates. So you know, we have an app which I think 192,000 people downloaded last year. Wow. And obviously a lot of those were at the festival, not all of them. And it allowed you to view 6 of the stages through the BBC. You could pinpoint your tent, you could pinpoint your car. It told you where you were on a map. And so I think that side, the sort of functionality of a phone and the value of being able to make contact. At Glastonbury last year, we had the first 4G network in a British festival. And although there were small numbers last year, I think that's really going to make a difference. I think that's really going to open up a whole new vista of possibilities. So it's all there for the asking. I think, you know, everybody who comes to the festival, you know, either runs away from their mobile phone because they don't want to have any contact, or doesn't let go of it because it tells them what's playing, where they're playing, who they're playing, and it's part and parcel.
Now, we'll come back to mobile and social from a slightly different perspective in a little while, because I know that both Orla and Paul have got things to say about it. But I want to switch over just because we are getting a few questions through on it. And as I said, food is something that seems to be popular this morning. To start us off, Jamie, thank you for submitting this. Is good food becoming more integral to the success of an event?
I don't think it's necessarily integral, but I think it's important. And I think that when people come to a festival, they expect to have good food, because good food's become part of what we're all used to in our other lives. Certainly at Glastonbury, we're really proud about the range of food we offer. I think there are 350 food stalls, and they're very high standard. And I think in the last few years, what's been wonderful for me is to realise that there's a new generation of people who are probably coming out of catering college and, you know, going into the street food market and just bringing a whole new sensibility. And it's a real joy, because it's superb food. And I know there are restaurants in London that have recognised that by travelling around the festival circuit, they get kudos.
Sure, awareness,
you know,
generation, absolutely, yeah.
So I think different festivals, it's obviously again higher in the mix. We value, because people are there for 5 days and they don't really have an opportunity to go anywhere else for food. It's very important to get the price right, to get the quality right. We put a lot of effort into trying to get the ingredients locally sourced. We're always trying to improve. We have biodegradable cutlery. All aspects of our food delivery to the festival goers is looked at in terms of improving its sustainability. But yeah, I think the quality of food is but some festivals it doesn't matter so much.
It doesn't.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of a reflection of the cultural trend really across the nation. We've become a bit of a nation of foodies really. There are so many TV shows that, you know, and celebrity chefs that we have, and I think that's just then been reflected in the festival arena, that we're just more interested in it these days.
Brilliant. And we're going to go to April now, who we had to get to this question because she was the first person to submit one. So thank you very much, April. And she's asking quite specifically, we know there's a growing trend of suppliers and seeing a diversity of that and matching, as you just touched on, Orla, the trend we're seeing throughout Britain. But is there an opportunity for, whether it be brands or individual suppliers and startups, to provide food for people to take in and prepare themselves, as opposed to what we see as the norm, I guess, which is buying on site?
Well, I think again, in the last 20 years, I think I remember that, you know, when you looked at the camping sites across Glastonbury, you know, there was a lot of food, and there still is some being eaten and produced and heated and whatever in the campsites. But I think when you've got 350 food stalls, and they are really interesting, and a real variety of different countries involved and cuisines involved, you know, the number of people bringing food to cook has gone down. I personally, I think that, you know, part of coming to a festival is to, you know, I can think of festivals other than Glastonbury where, you know, part of the you watch a band, but the walking around is deciding where you're going to eat.
Absolutely.
And getting it wrong, let's be honest. You know,
That's 50% of my day when I'm there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, other people set up a camp and they've got their friends and they get their pots and pans out and everything. I think that's a declining trend, if you know, from my experience. And I have to say, I hate to say this, but, you know, whenever there's any sort of food poisoning, as far as I'm aware, it's never from a stall. It's always from what you've left in the tent. Think about it.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
a fairly functional reason. Why not? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Brilliant. So we'll switch topics again and go back to brands, and you have to forgive us. I know this doesn't make for the best watching, but I'm going to have to read this one because it's fairly involved. Billy, thank you for submitting this. So Billy's asked, with the importance of personalised and interactive marketing predicted to be higher than ever in 2014, how can brands effectively reach individuals amongst the large crowd that a festival attracts on a personal level? And we'll leave the second part of the question until we've
Actually, if I can just interject there, because when we were talking about mobile, I was going to talk about the phenomenon which we've called physi-digital, which we've all seen within a festival audience, of the audience standing there with their phones, so watching their phones rather than watching the moment, not so much perhaps at Glastonbury, but some of the sort of younger demographic festivals. And I think that's one way brands can reach the audience, through the mobile in that way. So the moments are captured, they're uploaded to Facebook or to social networking. That's one way that brands can have that lasting connection.
And I'd say it's very much about knowing exactly what audience you want to speak to. If you want to have that real one-on-one dialogue with people, you have to know who you want to speak to and then produce something that's relevant to them. And there is such a diversity in audiences, in which case it has to be something that engages directly with that audience you're trying to target.
Great. So talking about engagement at that level, Duster has asked, how key is the ability of a brand to become as much a part of the entertainment as the performers themselves? Which I think, thank you for the question, Duster, is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So how key is the ability, or how, I guess, key to success is it for a brand to become as much a part of the entertainment as the entertainers themselves?
Wow,
Robert, it's got to be one for you.
Well, it's what we all aim for whenever we activate at festivals, isn't it?
I mean, I think as much as a brand can become an integral part of the festival, the better. So if it is part of the entertainment, yes, that is one way of doing it, and a great way. Anything that engages the people on site is brilliant. It doesn't have to be entertainment, but I think that's definitely a way or a channel to engage the consumers there on site.
Does that mean owning an arena, for example? There are some festivals that do have owned arenas within them. We won't mention them here.
I mean, I guess it depends on the scale. You can have owned arenas, but I mean,
or is that too simplistic?
Just even kind of characterisation. Having seen people around one festival in particular in 1920s gear and just engaging with crowds and getting people joining in and just getting the feel of
having
everything.
a personality.
Yeah, I mean, there are different scales of doing it. I'd say arena's one way, but even little things, just characters that roam the site.
I think it just comes back to what Paul and Ulla were saying earlier. I think that you need to get that right. And getting that right is a mix between what your brand is, what you want to do with your brand, your budget, what event you're going to go to, and getting that wrong is very easy. So getting it right entails having people who understand what the different festivals have to offer, what the mix in that festival is going to work. And it can't be just sort of handed out on the plate.
No,
It's-
I think also it is, going what I said previously, a lot of festivals are so completely different. So time is precious at some festivals. Time, you are looking at your lanyard, your playlist, you've got to get from this stage to that stage to this stage to that stage. Some of the longer festivals, I think there is opportunities there, there are opportunities there to bring something which obviously adds to your brand and adds to the occasion and to, you know, just an all-encompassing feel for something. I mean, I'm not going to name the festival that they are. You just see people running amok. This tent's finishing, this DJ starting. So it's time. Time is precious at a lot of festivals, particularly some of the daytime festivals, where licensing comes into play. Doors open at 11, may close at 11 in the evening. So that's you get in, you go see, you go do. Whereas some of the other weekend festivals, I think there are many more opportunities to bring that kind of content to that particular festival, which will enhance your brand's experience, I suppose.
Brilliant. We'll go back to social and mobile then, and I'm going to try and hit on a few points that have been raised through here. We saw last week some documents rose out of the sort of digital ether, as it were, regarding Twitter's potential development next year of a payment platform, so in-tweet payments. I know we could go in numerous directions with this, but one point that does raise that, Robert, I know Glastonbury is involved with is cashless payments and how that changes the environment.
We trialled 10 bars with cashless payment setups, and I think, you know, anything that helps people not come with cash, not have to have cash, is a benefit, you know, wherever you are, but particularly at a festival. And I think it's 80 to 90 ATMs on site, which is an enormous number if you think about it, how many you see in the high street. And they're all used all the time, and it's all about getting cash to go and buy things. And so if we can create another way of people being able to pay for things, and let's say I think it was twice as successful as the bar organisers thought it would be, and it was half as successful as the people who put the kit in. So, you know, that's pretty good. You know,
looking at an area of growth.
Yeah, definitely, no question.
Sorry, Robert, to jump. I think there are pros and cons. I think we have had discussions fairly recently from particular brands that are very interested in cashless payments because of the upside that it increases revenue, it turns over sales a lot quicker. I fully understand that. But I'm not sure what the actual start-up cost of that are. Now, whether you could contemplate approaching a festival, let's say Glastonbury, who have that technology in place, bolting on the back of that. But I think people do need to consider the start-up cost of this, because yes, it will increase sales, no doubt about that, increase turnover, but going back to the word research again, it needs to be looked at, because it's not something you should just plan everything. We will go down cashless payment route and then find out that's blown half your budget before you even set up. So I think that needs a little bit of sort of thought and consideration around that.
And I would never allow it to be the only way you could pay as well.
Just wouldn't advise
I mean, we've got a very robust technological layer to the festival because we're a fixed site and we've been around for a long time. But it would be ridiculous. I mean, and there will come a day when somebody says, why don't we just switch?
Yeah.
And because if you get hit by lightning, if this happens, and, you know, I mean, who knows what's going to happen in 20 years' time, but I think for the foreseeable future, it's another strand.
It is, I think
that's the thing. Yeah.
Now,
And at the end of the day, we're in the middle of a field. So
Yes, absolutely. If it can go wrong, it will.
now I want to get this one question in, because I've realised we are getting on in time. Expanding on that point and bringing it back to brands, we've obviously talked a lot about retail there with the bars and the food suppliers. Brands aren't always going to be retailing. A lot of the time it is about engagement. And if we are looking at FMCG and product-based stuff, do I, as that brand owner, have to be doing it as a free giveaway? And does it have to be a free experience? And this question has been asked of numerous channels, not just at festivals, does charging for that experience or charging for that product put people off?
I don't think so at all, actually. I think placing a value on something actually gives it value and then credibility in the real world as well, once you're outside of that festival field. the big thing for me, I think, is not overcharging people. I think people are used to going to festivals and expecting to pay quite high prices for things. So if they have a feeling that they've got a fair price out of something, then I think that is an engaging way for people to price their products. I mean, not to say that sampling can't be done, I think it can, but putting a value on something is not out of the question.
Great. And this is, I forget who submitted it, but an earlier question, can I mass sample at festivals?
In its place?
Yeah, I think that's dependent. Sorry, I think that's purely dependent in what the festival allow you to do. If anyone thinks I'm going to go in and just leaflet 50,000 people, that will not happen. I doubt it very much if that would happen. So once again, you have to be very, very conscious of the festival's requirements. A festival, most of the festivals we deal with, they are put on and instigated from very, very passionate people who obviously love the music industry. They become totally entrenched in putting their weekend on over that festival. They don't want people coming along, can we just leaflet in the car parks? No, it is. There are so many aspects to it. So I don't think that ever should be your sole aim to leaflet and mass market your brand at a festival. I think consumers are becoming more and more savvy. We're all bombarded when we're walking down every high street in the country. Do this, buy this, buy that. That I think now needs.
Yeah, I think there are other avenues for mass sampling, perhaps sporting arenas, but certainly not the festival environment, which is about engagement and it's about a long-term relationship.
Escapism, which we go back to, and escapism is not being leafleted.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Now, as I said, we have had a lot of other questions come through, and we will make sure they all get given an answer. But I'm going to hand back to Steph now, because I know we've got a couple more
we've
points
just got
to
a couple more minutes. I think just to wrap up, perhaps Ola and Paul, and I'm sure Robert will have a view as well, what lessons can we take from today's session and apply to the brands with which we work? Have you got any top tips?
Well, I just think, first of all, brands need to think why. You know, there needs to be a reason for attending a festival. It's not just a case of thinking, oh, festivals sound like a fun way of doing things. There needs to be some thought behind why. And then really thinking about the three components, your consumers, the festival, and then the brand, and making sure that the three work together in a way that fits everybody and it's not exclusive for one party. It needs to be a joint relationship.
I don't think I need to add too much there, unless your MD is a complete muso nut and's got a lot of money to spend and just wants 100 tickets for Glastonbury. I'm sure there's always an avenue down there from which we can
actually, I'm sure there isn't.
That was a joke, by the way.
Yeah. Robert, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that we people work for corporations. They live in the commercial world, and when they come to festivals, they are trying to get away from their everyday life, and certainly at Glastonbury, part of that is that the commercial part of life is down very, very significantly in that mix. I think, having said that, as I said earlier, it's inconceivable that you go to a modern festival and not have charging facilities, and people like EE do a wonderful job doing that. I think the core of why people go to festivals, I think, is the key to understanding what your brand may or may not be able to do. And they go to festivals, I think, to get away from and to escape into another world. And if you jar in that other world, you'll damage your brand in a way that you won't damage it in the high street. So it's a sensitive arena, whichever festival. I think that's really key. People who go to festivals have passion, as you say, and that passion can enhance the commercial engagement, but it can also cause a lot of damage if the people who are involved in that aren't understanding of the requirements needed. I think that's really important.
I think it's highly appropriate that Robert's had the last word here. I'd like to thank him, especially for making the journey from the Somerset levels. Or I think you came from Clapham this morning, but obviously our sympathy to everyone in Somerset who's suffering some horror stories. Thank you very much, audience, for joining us. We'll be back here at the same time next week, where we'll be with the men behind Lovebox and Wilderness. And I hope everyone has a great Festival Friday. Thank you.
Thank you very much.